Coming up this week on the Markcast. Hey there, did you know that the X in the XFL represents the intersection of dreams and opportunities? Well, it does. And now that you know that, we are here today trying to figure out what is the long-term vision of the XFL. Now that we're done with the XFL draft, part one, we're approaching February kickoff, we're getting all these teams together. What does the XFL want itself to be? Is this NFL light? Is this a standalone spring alternative? What is the XFL's long-term vision?
Maybe I am a monster. I don't think I'd know if I were one. And not what you are. And not what you intended. So there may be no way to make you trust me. But we need to go.
Incredibly excited to bring back longtime friend of the show and avid listener of the Markcast. He tells me Emory Hunt comes back on the program, was going to kind of do another deep dive into the XFL draft class, kind of ended up having a philosophical discussion about, what is the XFL? Where does it fit into the world? Where does the USFL fit into the world? What are we doing in this space here? A really great conversation with Emory. I hope you enjoy it.
If you want it to be minor league, then don't brand it as your own. If you all want it to be minor league, okay, cool. Come to the table, merge, and be the spring league, the NFL spring league. That's that, you know what I'm saying, if you want to go that route. But if you're creating your own entity, investing all this time and effort and money into creating your own brand, then make it your own brand.
And then continuing our CFL coverage, following our record-breaking Grey Cup pre-show live stream that we did. Thank you all for watching. Longtime friend of the program. We were just partying with him up in Regina for the Grey Cup. Ted Wyman comes onto the program to talk CFL, everything Blue Bombers, Argonauts, McLeod Bethel-Thompson's thumb, Mike O'Shea's re-signings, everything else.
The core is still there with this team. I think Stanley Bryant is looking to come back again. They've already got Caleros wrapped up for 3 years. Brady Oliveira is under contract. There's they're ready to go with that same core once again.
Thanks as always for watching. Like and subscribe. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Hope you all had a happy American Thanksgiving. If you were in the States, if it's just another Thursday, if you were in Canada. If you did not already check out my big draft special with Rick Saratella last week, hope you do that. Rick and I went live, took some questions, and kind of did a really deep dive breakdown into all 8 of the XFL teams thus far. Rick had 10 standout players from each, talking about why different DPPs of teams would want to kind of pick certain players and kind of develop the teams that way. Really great conversation with Rick. Really appreciate that. That's on the YouTube channel. Today on the program, more of a philosophical debate. Was going to have Emory Hunt come on, longtime friend of the show. Emory was going to join us on our XFL draft stream, and then just, his work schedule with TV hits couldn't make it on. So we have Emory on today. Was going to kind of do a continuing coverage of that. Okay, let's focus on some players. Ended up a little bit more kind of broad, meandering terms of what does the XFL represent? Are the players that they're drafting, is that what they mean when they talk about the X in the XFL being an intersection of dreams and opportunities? Are they putting their money where their mouth is, right? Should they be targeting different players? Kind of all that stuff. Really appreciate that. I thought Emory was great today. You could talk with him for 2 hours. Really appreciate that. Emory's time, super valuable. Really appreciate him joining us. And then, like I said, Ted Wyman with the Winnipeg Sun joining us. Really appreciate that. Getting kind of all the nitty gritty here, approaching the beginning of the CFL offseason, talking the Argonauts Grey Cup celebration, talking Winnipeg rebuilding, re-signing people already. We're re-signing coaches and Adam Bighill, Willie Jefferson, all that stuff. Really appreciate that today. Hope you guys enjoy. Gonna have I got my fingers in the fire, my spokes in the fire. What does it say? Next week should have a good interview lined up, some more XFL stuff, and then we're gonna be hitting here. Gonna have some more news coming up. Gonna have gonna have the uniforms. Gonna have all that stuff coming out. Before I toss to the interviews, a couple hires the XFL has had. I'm recording a little bit early this week, so if I have to pop back in, if there's any more hires, but the XFL has announced a couple more kind of joining the, if you want to call it the executive staff, whatever, of the XFL. The XFL has announced today, as I'm recording this, that Brooke Campbell has joined the league as Senior Vice President. She is replacing Erica Muhleman, who was currently filling that role. Erica has been promoted to Chief Revenue Officer. So remember back when we had one of the ticketing ladies left to go join the Sixers, I think. What does it say now? XFL, we're already promoting people within the organization here. Congrats to Erica for that. Congrats to Brooke Campbell. In this role, Campbell will manage day-to-day business operations for the XFL's 8 teams, including developing a consultative model to optimize market inputs and executing growth strategies in local markets as the XFL prepares for its 2023 season. That is legalese, corporate speak, if I've ever heard it. She will also implement and lead community-focused engagement initiatives to promote team and league awareness and build unique fandom in each city. I think back when we had announced Erica hire for the same position, I thought the big takeaway, I'm pretty sure this is the exact same job description, but everyone was like, oh my gosh, that means they're actually going to be in the cities, because at that point, we weren't really sure. Once the season begins, Campbell will oversee team activities, game day operations, and fan experiences. Going to be exciting here. Anyway, so we got that. Brooke Campbell joining, Erica Muhleman going up to the Chief Revenue Officer, but the Senior Vice President of Team Services, like I said, working with the local communities, kind of building that up. You have to imagine that the local team representatives will be working alongside Brooke for that. The other hire this week, Wendy Bass, hired as the Chief Business and Legal Officer for the XFL. This was announced on Tuesday as we record this. The XFL announced that Wendy Bass has joined the league as Chief Business and Legal Officer. Bass will oversee the legal, people operations, and technology departments, and will be responsible for the league's broadcast partnerships with the Walt Disney Company and ESPN. She will also oversee the league's betting and game efforts and will assist in collaboration with league sponsors. Bass will report to the XFL president, Russ Brandon. This is exciting. Obviously, XFL 2.0 leaned a lot into, sports betting, and they had even during the games, they kind of had the betting lines on there. Going to be kind of heading that up. We had a quote from Russ Brandon. Wendy brings a wealth of industry knowledge, and her business and legal background will help us navigate our ever-evolving growth cycle, Brandon says. We are excited to add her to the team. She joins the XFL from NBC, where she served as the Senior Vice President of Programming and Rights Management, overseeing programming, digital management, and acquisitions, while managing digital strategies and partnership. I would love to hire one of these people. What does Reed do at the Markcast? Reed is the brand manager, content producer, online host. I would love to hire one of these people. Love to get, I think all of our resumes would be there, but this is exciting. I joke, but this is exciting. Wendy Bass joining Chief Business and Legal Officer. I think that's it. We'll see if there's a future Read update here. If we have any other breaking news come in, we will do that. Otherwise, I will toss to Emory and Ted. Probably be back at the end of the show to say goodbye. Thanks. Well, I'm excited that we have Emory Hunt on. Try to get you on during the actual draft. I see how you do this, though. Now we get to do a deep dive with you, specialized today. But that's great. We get to talk with Emory today. I really appreciate you coming on. How are you doing today?
Doing fine, man. Always a pleasure being able to talk ball of the alternate kind. As people think it's winding down. What's going to happen to football season? Nah, it's still about to be football season once the calendar turns 2023.
No, it's good. Is this striking a chord? Any of this XFL stuff going on right now with you and your college guys and everyone draft? I mean, is this making waves right now in the time of year that we're in?
To be completely honest, no. And, they look at me like I'm the weirdo. Like, man, you cover all these leagues. Like, okay, yeah, let me just be the one covering all these leagues then. It's more work for me. But yeah, not a peep from people amongst my media colleagues, outside of a few that are hardcore like I am. So it's like 4 of us that are constantly talking about it every day. I hear a lot from players, college players, like they're excited for the opportunity, but everybody wants NFL. But in terms of the overall landscape, it's tough. I mean, it's funny. I said this on Sunday while watching the NFL games. It's like, man, I see the USFL throwing out their promos already, and they're after the XFL, and you don't even see the XFL throwing out their commercials, and they right off the bat, right after the Super Bowl. It should be now,
Yeah, I would agree with that. The XFL need to, those USFL promos are so weird because it's like June, whatever, 2020. You're like, okay, so wait, what is, and then at the end, it's like April 2023. I'm like, Okay, so when is it? I don't like those. I think they're great. They're highlighting, like Matthew Colburn was on there. I thought that was great, right? He's a standout. I think you want it to look like it's football. I don't know if they're showing the dates to try to have it be like, see, this is not in the normal time of year. But when I watch those, I'm like, I know this is happening April 15th or whenever the kickoff is. Also, I don't know why we're advertising this now 5 months out. But I do agree the XFL needs to be.
They have to, man, because at the end of the day, we know how it is. It's out of sight, out of mind. And you want to start to draw up that support for your not only ticket sales, because you're going to rely a lot on butts and seats, but also just for the fan to continue to maintain that football interest. Okay, after the Super Bowl, I got something else to look forward to.
Well, and, that's the thing is also, we do these shows, the draft, and like you had your analysis articles and all that. This kind of piques interest. I thought we were hitting this 4-month window now where we're going to, that's what we were kind of, told then, hey, okay, we're not going to do all this stuff, but 4 months out, now we're really going to build up. I mean, I already saw people commenting yesterday, hey, I want XFL news. I'm like, hey, we just had the draft 2 weeks ago. I mean, that's like a millennia in terms of XFL time. Like that's very recent in XFL news time.
Especially when, and I saw your commentary the other day talking about the road to the draft, and then there was supposed to be something else that came out, and it ended up being a repeat of the Path to the Draft show. It's like, man, this would have been a great opportunity, because I felt bad. I was like, oh man, I missed it, but I'm gonna go back on demand and check it out. And then I saw your tweet. I'm like, oh, I ain't gonna check that out because it's what I've watched already, And so I just feel I feel bad. It's almost like something you said a while ago, like you feel like you're the only one that cares about this, That sometimes I feel like the same way. It's like, man, why am I caring so much about this if they're not doing? But, I do understand everything is a slow build up, but they've done a great job with acquiring talent and getting the draft stuff. And, talking about that, we have team names, we have logos, we have colors, you have, rosters now. You're still waiting probably for that deadline to really go full fledged into, hey, we're going to promote this guy that he's going to be on a roster, as opposed to, hey, we're promoting this guy that he signs with the NFL on the practice squad and takes a future deal. So I get it why they're slow playing this, but I'm just excited that, they have these rosters in place. Guys know that they're going to be playing the XFL, and it gives these college players that are coming out, hey, okay, here's an opportunity. I can go, option A, XFL, or option B, USFL.
So, yeah, and so we'll get it on that, because I think we could do a whole, segment here just talking about kind of the, where is the XFL state of that. But when you were on before, you talked about how fundamentally USFL and XFL need to target different sets of people. That the USFL, maybe these guys have been out of the league for a couple of years, kind of like their last hurrah, right? You get like a Kyle Sloter in there, which, interestingly enough, was in the XFL here. And then the XFL, these guys that want to bounce right back in. First off, how do you think the XFL did in terms of this first, and like you said, obviously we're going to have the supplemental draft. How do you think they did targeting who you think they should have in this initial run?
I thought they did a fantastic job outside of the quarterbacks, because when you look at a lot of the rosters, okay, this guy is from you saw a heavy 2022 and 2021 draft class. That's perfect. That's exactly what you need. Even 2020, when I was putting together my draft recap, I'm looking at the rosters, I'm looking through my draft guys. I'm like, oh, okay, this guy, I stayed away from guys that were like 18, 19, but 20, 21, 22. That's ideally what you want if you're the XFL, because you're getting these younger guys, giving them an opportunity to get fresher tape to bounce back. And on the USFL side, you want those guys like we talked about, the Sloter or even the Case Cookers, those guys that have been on rosters. Maybe you want the guys from the 17, 18, 17, let's say the 21 draft class, and with your sprinkle of the rookies of the current draft class. But you want those guys that maybe 2 or 3 years predating the 3 years that the XFL focused on with their draft. And that's why it kind of makes sense when you look at the schedule. The younger guys are going to take that opportunity to go be on a futures deal and be on a practice squad, when the older guys know the game and know that if I take this future deal, I'm not going to really get a real opportunity. Let me just stay here and get this money and get this opportunity to play in the USFL. So that's why my thoughts initially was this is how they should focus. And I'm glad to see it kind of manifest itself out there in the XFL draft.
This is to me now the most interesting part of having both of these leagues now, because this was the AAF XFL that was never promised, where we have these two leagues now, different, similar. I still get people like, oh, they're not running the same time, but it's the timelines are interesting enough. Now we see guys tried to sign to the NFL, now they've faulted back to their free agents because of like the contract loopholes. Were you surprised to see the amount of talent we saw move to the XFL? And then obviously it was one of the running backs re-signed with Jackson or whatever, re-signed with the USFL that was drafted by the XFL. But were you surprised to see the talent and kind of, it's like the talent war is now actually happening in real time?
Not surprised at all, because it kind of meshed with some of these guys' contracts expiring, or some that got that NFL opportunity, so that voided their contracts, so that they were free to jump into the XFL. It shows you how bad these dudes want to play. And that's that's the overarching point I got from this thing, was that these guys truly want to play. It doesn't matter if it's the XFL or USFL, but that's why I'm so excited, because we have two statewide football options, 11 on 11, 120 by 53 in the third. It's not a different game like the CFL. I keep trying to tell a lot of guys that say, hey, just go to CFL. Yes, but it's a different game. You got the ratio up there. Plus, you have to really, and somebody, it was on the last show I was on where they asked about, and I read the article on 3 Down Nation too, talking about how the CFL can, kind of cut the ties with some of these places to where you cut off the talent. Like, no, all 3 leagues are vying for 3 different types of guys. CFL wants a smaller, quicker guy, and they have their own talent pipeline with U Sports. So they're going to be fine regardless what the USFL, XFL does. And a lot of times they're going to get the guy that's on the older side of the NFL side to come up there and play. So instead of, the USFL going from, let's say, the 19, 20, 21 class, or 18, 19, 20 class, CFL is probably going to get the guy from the 16, 17, 18 class more so than these other leagues. So you're not even vying for the same talent. You're not going to get a rookie talent coming out of college to go to the CFL. If they do, they go later in like in November, like a Levi Lewis of the University of Louisiana. He's going to go up there later when he should have been up there from the start. So I think, everybody can eat. There's enough football talent around. The fact that Canada has its own college football system, you're going to be fine in terms of your own pipeline. Invest into that pipeline, get more guys to play, develop those guys faster, and you won't even have to worry about players from the States.
Interesting. I have Jim Muhleman on a lot, president of Football Canada, and it seems like they're very much not going that route, right? Of just trying to foster these relationships with, Football Canada and amateur sports up there. Interesting that, like, that's what they should be leaning more into. But it's like, no, I also don't think the timeline matters at all. I think that the game is so different. We were talking, Mike Mitchell, in the group chat when that article came out, and it's like, the game is so different. You have to be a really talented scout to look and see. A lot of the scouts look at the CFL and they go, well, they have the waggle that inflates numbers. They have the, their line, yard off the ball. Like, we can't really judge offensive line that way. Like, the game doesn't translate the way that I think CFL people do. And there's a reason why, 51 people went from the USFL to the NFL last year, and you don't get 50 people from the CFL every year transitioning down after this, not after the season, but, into the next NFL season. So
it's a different game, man. And it's funny because I started to reflect that in how I graded players. And because watching the CFL, a long time, I saw there's a crossover for the NFL for the longest. It was like, hey, free safety, strong safety. But then watching as much CFL as I did, it was like, you know what? There's actually a third safety, and we can call it in the NFL a combo safety, but up there they call it a halfback. And so it's the same concept. So you may get a guy that's, not the more fluid free safety, deep third guy that we're used to seeing, but he's not necessarily the thumper, strong safety, Rodney Harrison type that fly in the box and knock you out. He's kind of in between. He could play both. He's not as fast for a free safety, but not as powerful for a strong safety, but he can cover a little bit. Man, that's a halfback. That's a defensive halfback. So I started adding that to the draft guy and calling it combo safety. And a lot of those guys we're seeing now trickle into the NFL because of how the game is slowly become, passing game wise, slowly has become what the CFL has been doing since, the 1800s.
Focusing on the XFL here, one of our listener Max helped us come up with all these wonderful questions. Talking quarterbacks, you said you thought that the XFL did a good job, except some of the quarterbacks in the Orlando quarterback room. Obviously, we still have the supplemental draft coming up. They had Francois there, FCF guy, kind of struggled. Dormady and then Mitch Kidd. What do you think the difficulties are from transitioning from like FCF arena ball to the XFL as a quarterback?
I think it's tough because you're playing inside it's almost like you're playing. We used to say this a lot back when the original Arena Football League was out and we were in college. Like, man, it's like playing football in the classroom. Like you got to be accurate, and the ball got to come out quick, velocity wise, and you have zero room for error. But when you take that guy who has played in that game and put him outside, it feels like, oh, I have so much more room to work with. That's why Kurt Warner was able to transition rather well. Because he was already trained to, throw in the tight windows because he had to go outside. Okay, now it expands. But you take somebody from the outside game that have played that predominantly their whole life and go into an indoor game, they think they have the same amount of time in the pocket. They have the same type of passing windows, and it's tough. So I think them getting those guys back into the 11-on-11 game, outdoor game, they're going to make that transition easier. But I just felt like the biggest question I had was, man, here's a great opportunity for this league to really, all the marketing and promos that we've heard from Danny Garcia and The Rock talk about, this is the crossroads of opportunity, whatever they say, right? But they say that all the time, right?
Dreams and opportunities.
But we go get AJ McCarron. What the hell is that? You know what I'm saying? Like that totally contradicts, your whole mission statement. Go and get some of these young guys that are class of 2022 guys, like what the Houston Roughnecks did with Caleb Ellaby. That was a fantastic pick. That's the type of quarterback you should target, because we know that guy won't get the opportunity in an NFL camp as a fourth arm. Bring him in, draft him, let him ball out, and that's your new star, like your PJ Walkers. You know what I'm saying? So don't go, AJ McCarron is 30 plus years old. What are we even doing? Like that now gives a black eye to the league, and people say, "Oh, AJ McCarron, like I'm not taking that league seriously." No, they want to see these young guys come in there and get an opportunity to play. Yes, you want a veteran guy, but if you can go and get these young guys and you go through a normal training camp, they can then hit the ground running like you think a veteran will. You know what I'm saying? We saw this last time the XFL came out. They front loaded with name brand players who stunk, and midway through the season, I would say after 2 games, the backups were already starters in a lot of these places, because the backups were the young guys that could move around, that brought exciting play. It brought fans to watch. So I think some teams got it right and some teams are way off.
Do you blame that on some of the coaching staffs, or is that a league issue? Where do you think that stems from?
That's a great question, Reed. I'm thinking, it's multi-layered. I'm not going to put it on the coaches. I'm going to put it on the league itself, for the people they got in bed with. Who made Jordan Palmer the end-all, be-all for the quarterback guy? So now, if he says, and it's all about relationships, right? So if I have a relationship with these players, they've worked under me. Oh, I'm now in charge of the quarterback development for the league. I'm going to give my guys an opportunity. That's just human nature. It's no shade to Jordan Palmer, but it's just how human nature is. If you got hired at NBC or CBS or Fox or ESPN, you're going to bring in somebody. They say, Reed, you're in charge of, XFL, USFL content, and you have to build out a team. Who are you going to go to? The people that you've worked with, that that have, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to bring your guys that are in this space. So I get it. But now you have to, who's grading the grader? Bro, do we really need AJ McCarron? Do we really need this guy in? Because, he's, do you have an inherent bias towards certain quarterbacks because of how you played the game? You expect everybody to play the game how you played it. Like, there's a lot that goes on in those decisions. So I think because they, married they tied their wagon to one guy as the quarterback developer. That's why the quarterbacks look like they do for these teams. So it'll be interesting to see in the supplemental draft who these staffs bring in that don't run parallel to what Jordan Palmer already gave, or they're these quarterbacks that were issued to these teams. Because I'm willing to bet a lot of guys that they bring in are going to beat out the guys that they, awarded to these teams.
I hope this isn't a slight at America's sweetheart, Brandon Silvers here. I have his. I mean, it was weird seeing some of these names come back. I mean, you had Ben DiNucci was interesting to me just because I tracked him through, I think, Hard Knocks and everything with the Cowboys, and I kind of thought he would have stuck on, and you were dealing with all that with Dak and the contracts and stuff. But like that, at least excited my season ticket holder friends in Seattle. Were like, yes, like that was a great pick for Seattle. Some of the other names like Silvers and all that, were you like, okay, here we go again?
No, it wasn't necessarily those names because, Silvers played well in, his time. I was the Luis Perez's, right? And, like, why, man? And it's not a knock on Luis Perez. Let's just judge Perez off what we saw last. He wasn't better than DeAndre Johnson, DeAndre Johnson was a guy that made that offense go. That offense started to take off when he was the guy. Let's talk about Brian Scott, who's I know he's a friend of the show. He's a good dude. He played well when he got the opportunity, but that offense started to cook when Cookis was in, and so at what point do we trust the tape? And so that's the whole thing. Like, you even just suspended to the USFL when the Michigan Panthers made Shea Patterson number one. Like, what were you doing? It's not a knock on Shea Patterson, but what happened? We saw Paxton Lynch take over. Then we saw the better quarterback, Eric Berrier, who's a young guy, rookie, to my point earlier, look good in the opportunities he got. So it was like, hey, man, and I tweeted this out during the draft, and it was kind of like reading between the lines. It was vague, but this is exactly what I was referring to, is like, don't create something new to do the same things that have been done in other leagues. Like, don't create a whole new league talking about you can be fresh and innovative, and then you bring in AJ McCarron. What the hell are we doing there? So I feel like until these quarterback situations get straightened out, so I know the supplemental draft is going to be big on bringing in maybe 2 quarterbacks. So now you have 4, let them compete and let the best man win. But some of these names, you just like, man, we just, as good of a story Luis Perez is, as solid as he has played, I think even in this juncture of his career, he's better suited to be a QB2 on a roster. So for Vegas, I see Jalen McClendon as the quarterback along with Perez. So if you told me Perez was your backup, I have no problem with that, because I know Perez does one thing well. He's always prepared. He's always ready, and he's going to step in and not tank the team. You know what I'm saying? And he'll keep the team afloat. If McClendon starts to struggle, you throw Perez in there. Perez at least will give you a chance, But in terms of elevating, you want to go with the guy that has a more upside, and that's probably McClendon. But looking at that depth chart, they need to bring in at least 2 more guys to see what happened. We saw the Generals do that when they made the Ben Holmes draft pick, and then we ended up seeing, go get Luis Perez and get DeAndre Johnson, and both of those guys ended up being exactly what they needed. Shout out to Ben Holmes, Grey Cup champion, out there for whatchamacallit, the one in Grey Cup. Toronto Argonauts.
Shout out Ben Holmes, the only player that ever stood me up for an interview and then blocked me online. So, I mean, it's really, I thought he had the Markcast curse. He really had, because he got cut from the Generals, and I think he was on the Alouettes, got cut from the Alouettes. He was on a couple different CFL teams and then latched on to the Argonauts. But I said, I thought that was going to haunt him for a while, and then what do I know? He wouldn't win a Grey Cup. But maybe that was the Markcast bump then, was you show us, and then you get to be a Grey Cup champion. So, no, there's the only player that's ever stood me up for an interview. Does that surprise you, knowing Ben Holmes, that he would stand me up for an interview?
You, of all people that do a great job of covering these alternate leagues, like, unbelievable. If anything, stand anybody else up but you.
Yeah. Do you... The XFL, we're talking the X is the intersection of dreams and opportunities. Like, so do they... Quarterbacks aside here, but I mean, I always think, I don't know... Like, do they have an identity crisis here? Like, what are we doing? Do you, confidence level right now, where it'll be December as this airs, confidence level on XFL 3.0 here in December of 2022?
Confidence is at about even. I trust the football people that they have involved. I was amped about all of these rosters, because a lot of these guys, you're like, damn, I thought this dude was still on the practice squad in the NFL. I'm glad he's going to get an opportunity. And this is across the board, all positions. All the DPPs are strong football guys, and I know they had a hand in a lot of these picks. And the coaching staffs, I'm excited to see. So I'm not worried about the football part. The other side of things is where you worry. Like, how much is ESPN putting into covering this or promoting this? You know, who's going to be in charge of covering? It can't just be Kevin Seifert. You know, it has to be, you know, people that actually, there's a host of writers that are there. You know, Teron Davenport, who covers the Tennessee Titans, he is a football head like we are. You know, he is all in on these XFL, USFL guys. He would be great to cover. You want people like that would have a vested interest in covering the league. And I get the reason why it's a little bit of trepidation, because to be completely honest, you have to put together a whole damn league, you know, from scratch. Next year, the confidence is going to be sky high because all of this groundwork has already been laid, which is why the USFL next year, you know, in this upcoming season, confidence is sky high because we've seen all the, you know, the rough parts. So we've seen all of them smooth out all that stuff. They got year one out the way. XFL 3.0 is going to be the same way. You know, it's hard to build a whole league from the ground up, especially when you don't have experience in building the league from the ground up. And that's the other part of it too. So that's why I'm not worried about the football part. It's the administrative part that they're still working through. And that's going to be solved at the end of this season. So therefore, going into, you know, year 2 of XFL 3.0, it'll be sky high like it is with the USFL.
I don't know. Even USFL here heading in. My big thing last night I tweeted before I went to bed and got up for this was, you know, USFL did this too. We're not color grading our footage. Like have you seen like these XFL, like the social? And I don't know if it's like we haven't hired the art director yet, or, you know, it's December. Haven't hired the art director. We haven't hired all these people. Like we're posting things. Like it just. Even like the Black Friday, it feels, I don't know, it feels like it's you. I feel like now it feels like USFL last year where it's like social media by committee. We're posting things. We don't really have a direction. And I understand all that. And I get it's December, but I didn't create this timeline. Like we've had 27 months now to figure this out. It feels like we're really kind of getting our homework done here the night before, or like we're walking into the classroom the day of trying to get the homework done here before I don't know why it feels so rushed when we've had so long.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm scrolling Instagram yesterday, just wasting time, and a Houston Roughnecks ad pops up, or I follow all the XFL teams, so it pop up, and I'm like, they talking about the sale. I guess it's a Cyber Monday or whatever. So I hit them up. I'm like, yo, do you have mini helmets? Because I'm a mini helmets guy, because I use them for props behind me when I'm on air. Why don't we have the helmets yet? Like, it seemed like that would be like the first, you know what I'm saying? Along with the logo, helmet, colors, then uniform, then apparel. So some stuff, like I would buy all 8 helmets right now if it was a league helmet. I only have the old XFL from the 2000, that one, you know what I'm saying? The original XFL helmet. So it's like, simple stuff like that. Like, why are the uniforms being withheld? Uniforms would have been perfect for the draft. You know, the helmet would have been perfect for the draft. So yeah, it does feel like we're figuring things out as we go along. I see what you said about the video quality. It looks like that one person that just likes this one filter. It's like the one person that wants to create graphics for you and they only like Comic Sans. You're like, hey man, there's other fonts out there you could use. Like, oh my, but this one just works for me. Like, nah, pick another font. You know what I'm saying? So I get what you're saying there.
Well, I don't, and I text with people, don't worry about that. I'm like, but it's like a million cuts here. Like it's death by 1,000 cuts, like every single one of these things. And it just, USFL does it too. And they posted Skip going, I think it was when they did the Birmingham Hub thing. And it was such a flat color profile. Like, you're like, what is even happening here? Like they, shot it right out of the camera. I understand all this. Like I've said, I'll consult for free. I have no interest to work for any of this stuff. This is not Reed trying to, I do wedding videos. This isn't Reed trying to like get a job. I would consult for free here, but this is crazy. A couple more football things before I let you go. I appreciate your time here, and I'm going to run to. Talking back to the XFL talent level, when we're talking, developmental league, minor league, whether it's USFL or the XFL, people worry about loss of competitiveness because they expect teams with split reps to distribute player development like they did in NFL Europe sometimes. Is that a long-term concern for you in the XFL and maybe even the USFL, but especially the XFL?
That's another great question, Reed, because for me, it's like, I think it's all due to the messaging. You can get what you want if you change how you talk about it. And if you talk about this is our league, you kind of talk in terms of people investing in it, buying in, staying in the league, and not looking at it as a jump off spot. Because if you talk about it as a jump off spot or a launch pad spot into the NFL or a developmental league for the NFL, people will treat it as such. And so you'll see somebody come in here and complain about the reps they're getting. I ain't getting enough reps. I ain't getting enough tapes to really show to the NFL. But if you have ownership, like some of the dudes in the USFL have already done, they've relegated, hey man, this is, I'm in the USFL, and you see in their bios on Twitter, tailback at, Memphis Showboats or whatever the case may be. If you treat it like a pro league, everybody around it will treat it as such. Don't treat it like a stop talking about the NFL. If it happens, cool. Keep that, internal, but talk about this is our league. We want to create XFL stars. We want Jalen McClendon or Luis Perez to be an XFL Hall of Famer. We want to talk in terms of that. We want to grow our game, our league, our own players. If guys' contracts are up and they get an opportunity elsewhere, that's even better for us. But we're not going to talk about it. We want it to happen, but we want to make sure guys are, because we want to get to a place where, and I brought this up on the XFL News Hub show, we want to get to a place where college guys choose us over them, right? You want to get to a situation where, and I keep bringing them up, Stetson Bennett, after they play their playoff game, I am going to the XFL. That's why I want to play. That suits my style, and I think that once that happens, then you have yourselves a league. So, and you got to operate like you would a regular professional league. So you can't just get the NFL's, scraps. You know what? Be proactive. Go out and recruit juniors that are thinking about coming out. Hey, man, come over here and play. You may, based off our evaluation, you may not be able to, you may not get a day 1 or day 2 grade. If you're day 3, you're already on the fringe, which means you're going to end up in our league anyway. If you come out with us, play early, and then, hey, we finished before the draft. You still get drafted by the NFL. If not, you've put out good tape and come back another year. I just want these, and this is for both leagues, really invest in building your own brand. And you see less of that in the USFL, guys talking about the NFL, as opposed to the XFL. That's all they talk about.
I know it's we were down in Arizona. We were talking with the coach Beckton. Yeah, he said the same thing. Like, if every single one of my players got drafted by the NFL here after the season, I would consider that a success. And it's like, well, or winning the championship. Like, I you know what I mean? Like, at some point, it can't just be NFL light. It has to. I don't think there's enough eyeballs there that this is just minor league. I mean, that it's going to sustain that over year 1 or 2.
Because if you want it to be minor league, then don't brand it as your own. If you all want it to be minor league, okay, cool. Come to the table, merge, and be the spring league, the NFL spring league. That's that, what I'm saying, if you want to go that route. But if you're creating your own entity, investing all this time and effort and money into creating your own brand, then make it your own brand. Like, make it a unique brand of football. And that's what you want. Because guys are going to always peek over the fence and they want the NFL because of the dollars. But it's hard to get someone that's 22, 23 to think long-term, effects. This is almost like the NFL in its infancy when you had guys playing in different leagues. Some guys are playing in the NFL, but shit, I'm going to go play in Canada because they were paying more than they were paying the NFL at the time. But thinking in terms of longevity, as the game grows, so will the salaries and all of those things. So now you can then it may not affect you as a 22-year-old. It may affect the guy that's right now in 5th grade, And so, but hey, sometimes you have to sacrifice to build a better brand. And if everybody, they say rising tides raise all boats. So if the USFL and the XFL are making at least base salaries $350 to $450, that raises everybody's level of competition. And so now you can really legitimately choose between the three different leagues. And I think we got to get out of saying, developmentally, because that sounds like if that's what you want to go, there's ways to make that happen. You could combine, you could have 16 teams, you could be the NFL Spring League in the States and go from there.
Last question for me. I'll let you go. Max is going to be mad we didn't get to all these, but I think we hit a lot of them, young talent and the quarterbacks and stuff on here. It seems the way the timeline is now, right? We said XFL is relying on NFL, right? The Alumni Academy, all that. They get the leftovers now, except for, the one player that signed thus far that was drafted by the XFL, USFL, it seems to be spiraling, it goes downhill in that direction, right? Is USFL, is there enough quality? I don't think there's a question, is there enough talent, but is there enough quality people there when, XFL it seems like they come in, they take whoever they want. USFL is going to be left more or less. I don't see a lot of players holding out right now. Slaughter and Luis Perez, even Case Cookus, right, could be back here after his Rams practice spot. Where do you make of them in this landscape now?
I think the USFL is sitting pretty. They're backed by a network. And so they have the season, they have here's what we can show you. This is what we were able to do. And I feel like they have a brand, and now that this lawsuit is over, they can probably lean more into the history. You saw them bring back the Memphis Showboats, which means they're going to eventually bring back the Tampa Bay Bandits. Once, things get settled, we're already talking about 3 hubs, maybe even 4. So they're already on track for everything they told us prior to year one. They're on track to do it, which is great. So they're building slowly in the right direction. So I think they're sitting pretty with where they are right now in this whole landscape.
Prettier than the XFL?
Prettier right now than the XFL, yes, because they have a year of experience under their belt. And we have to give a lot of credit to Brian Woods and what he's and Daryl Johnson. They both have experience in building the league. Johnson was heavily involved in the AAF, and Woods has been doing this since the XFL, the Spring League, all that stuff like that. Where Danny Garcia and The Rock are just they're still learning how to build this thing. They got people that have been a part of other leagues and professionally. They got good people around them, but they are the figureheads and the front people. And it looks like they're still trying to figure out how to promote this thing or run this thing, and almost they're thinking in terms of like TV and movie as opposed to football. And once they get those to get on the same level, then I think they'll be fine.
I just Brian Woods basically did 3 seasons of spring football with cardboard in his garage, kind of manufactured it like. USFL, it's interesting. I love this. I think it's so fascinating. And I know we were supposed to do more player breakdown stuff today, but I appreciate this conversation too, because I think this is where my interest lies, and just how do we get these, these 2-headed monsters here and fighting. Any other thoughts before I let you go? I really appreciate you stopping by today.
Yeah, I think once the XFL gets on the field, I think the second supplemental draft in January is going to help color in some of the spots that we are looking at on the different rosters. Like, I know DC will probably get back Derek King, but there's another guy out there. I know the guy, but I can't say it. I know who's going to be the other quarterback, and that's going to help color in a big question mark. That is just like what we're talking about. But I also feel like, once they hit the field, the football is going to be the football, and it's going to be good. It's going to be competitive. These are talented teams, and based off each individual team, I think it'll ultimately come down to who has the better quarterback that'll win the game, because both offense and defense are stacked. Like, they have legitimately put together really good rosters, and it's going to be to the death or success of the quarterback position. And if they nail that, and I like the fact that now they understand, based off what the USFL didn't do in year one, you got to get these guys a ramp up time, a longer runway. USFL is going to be able to do that this year, which we should see better play right out of the gate. And I think we're going to see really good play from the XFL right out of the gate. And I'm excited to talk about it, excited to cover, because I know we're winning to putting these rosters together. You have all the guys that competed in, all the showcases, which now those guys could be upset right now, but don't be upset. They now have you are like first call up. They have now your height, weight, measurement, speed, and all that stuff like that. And if somebody goes down or somebody decides to go to the NFL or not sign their commitment to the league, guess who's going to get called up? They know you. They built a relationship. So it's all good things, I think, football-wise, coming from the XFL.
I do agree. The longer football ramp up, like you said, maybe not so much marketing with the XFL. I do think that was one of the biggest things against the USFL season 1. I think if that first weekend of games, the kickoff game was good, but the other 3 were kind of trash. And I know we had that delay. It was like the weather delay and all that stuff. Yeah. But I think if that first weekend would have been like, oh my God, this is much watched football, I think they would have maintained that viewership, right? Where they really peaked. And I know the kickoff games always seem to get the most, but I think if they had 2 more weeks of training camp and a little bit more gel on those rosters, I don't think they would have seen quite, because I think a lot of people checked it out. I think they did a great job getting the views out there. I think XFL will too. Like, you have to nail that first weekend or people are never going to tune back in. This whole Better Call Saul, it starts slow, but by the time you get to season 5, like, it's fire. Like, you don't do that. Like, you turn on this, and if it's great, if it's not, then you're not going to turn back in week 2. So
I will say this too. And it's based off, how people kept talking about the optics. First of all, I've never tuned into a football game and was like, look at the crowd. I've never done that. I've always looked at, I just watched the FCS playoff game last week in Montana, Southeast Missouri State. I didn't realize they had 13,000 in the stands. I just assumed because it's Montana, it's a playoff game, it was packed. But then they did a crowd shot. I was like, oh, wow. But that was the first time I saw it. But I'm focused on the football on the field. And I think people that talked about the crowd constantly didn't really care about the football on the field anyway. They would, because how people get on social media, they just want to throw shots at everything. They always want to be a negative towards something. But if I'm like the USFL, or even in some cases the XFL, XFL has done it because they saw what the optics were with the crowds or whatnot. But if I'm the USFL, and let's say you're looking at New Orleans would support their team in the city, get ahead of things, and I would say start investing in some of these places that you want to play. So I know the stadium options in New Orleans. I played in different stadiums in New Orleans. The Tag Armory Stadium would be the perfect spot for the New Orleans Breakers, but the locker rooms look like it was when I was there in high school in '98. If you invest in that locker room, get it renovated, you already have an in-house stadium right there, and then you can move the Breakers. So start investing into some of these places. I know you can't, if you're in Philly, you can't invest into Franklin Field because it's a historic landmark and there's not much you really can do. But at worst, you could build a parking deck, and put it around, so start investing in the infrastructure to make it easier for you to move some of these teams to their cities. So it'll be fascinating to see how they do that with New Jersey, with New Orleans. I think in Tampa, they're waiting probably for their USF on campus stadium. There you go. That's when we'll see the Bandits come back. So the XFL really has to figure out what they want to do with Vegas, and figure that part out. But start investing in the infrastructure of your own buildings, because then we know how buildings are. You own the building, you own the property, you then can have events in there. That's why everybody wants these new stadiums with retractable roofs, not because they want the football to be in perfect conditions. No, they want to hold events all year round to make money to help pay for the stadium. You know what I'm saying? So if you start thinking like that, if you're the USFL, XFL, investing in infrastructure that you want to see to help your teams move, but also trying to create revenue the rest of the way, you can grow this thing faster than anticipated.
You're talking investing in buildings here. I'm talking like color grading video. We gotta crawl before we can walk here, Emory. But no, I appreciate it. I think I definitely understand. You gotta have a long-term vision here. And I don't know. I was told get through USFL year 1, then it's going to be better, and XFL. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. All the crowds that are running these are very interesting to me, very fascinating. So, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Extended time today. Thank you for sticking around, and I appreciate it so much.
Always a pleasure, man. Thank you again, and keep doing great work out there. Listen, I am a loyal listener every week, no matter how long it is. It's either when I'm on the road or on the treadmill. I am locked into the Markcast.
Yeah, all 8.5 hours of the. I don't think my wife watched all that. She normally watches all of it, but I don't think we got the all 8.5 hours of the draft. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Emory. Well, the hangover from Grey Cup weekend, I think, is fading off now. We have Ted Wyman on. We were busy partying in Regina, and now we are virtual here. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I think I've had enough time to recover, Reed, but, it was certainly a week that was fitting for a Grey Cup. That's one of the best times of the year. It's like Christmas if you're a Canadian football guy, and it sure was a lot of fun. Great to see you, too.
It was good, yeah. And you're coming down here to Seattle. You're covering the Jets here against the Kraken. The Red Hot, as we record, we'll see the Red Hot Kraken. Just before we talk kind of the week's news, Grey Cup, any lingering thoughts on Grey Cup, the game, the festival, Winnipeg, the no dynasty, anything?
Yeah, I was in a bit of shock for a few days that the Bombers lost the game. I didn't think they would. I really thought they had the better team than Toronto. They had done everything right all year, and they had this veteran group and the mindset that you just thought there's no way that they're going to come out and have a clunker of a game. But honestly, they did. I didn't think that the Argos played that great, to be honest. The Bombers just played worse, and Toronto did play better. They were the better team on that day, and they won. I just didn't think they were out of this world fantastic, and that's why they won. It was disappointing, I think, for the Bombers especially to come out and just not have their best game on that day. Because the way that things are shaping up with this team, they could be in Grey Cups the next 2-3 years, and it will be kind of just that blip. It could just be that blip on the radar of what we were thinking would be a dynasty.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get into Coach O'Shea and all that, but you don't feel like their loss. We're not blowing everything up. This was
the opposite, really. When they've had a week since the Grey Cup, and they've already signed Pat Neufeld and Adam Bighill and Willie Jefferson. These guys all live in Winnipeg, so it's not that hard, I don't think, to get them to come back. But it's the core is still there with this team. I think Stanley Bryant is looking to come back again. They've already got Collaros wrapped up for 3 years. Brady Oliveira is under contract. There's they're ready to go with that same core once again. And you just have to assume Mike O'Shea, we believe he has signed a contract, or he is in the process of signing a 3-year contract to stick around. It's not all done yet. I don't think it's signed. It hasn't been announced, but it certainly sounds like that's the case. So you're going to bring back that core. You're going to bring back Mike O'Shea. What are you going to look at the start of next season that's going to say they're not the favorites to win the Grey Cup? I can't see it. I think they are going to be the favorites from the start of the season once again, and I expect them to be in the mix at the end of the season.
You talked, re-signing the couple of them this week. CFL, to me, it always goes dead, right? The day after. Is this unusual? We're getting everyone back. Like you said, a couple of these guys are local, but is that unusual to get it signed so quickly?
I'd say so. They have done that in the past where they've had staggered a few signings in December before it gets really into it. And then usually there's a pretty big lull until free agency comes. So if guys don't sign in December, maybe then you start to wonder what's going to happen. But I have a feeling that with the Bombers, maybe there's some method to the madness here in that they wanted to make sure that they got some good news out there after what happened in the Grey Cup. I don't think that the fans are that upset. They had just won 2 in a row. They had 3 years on the top because the one season was canceled. They made it to the Grey Cup again, which makes Grey Cup Sunday awfully fun when your team is in the game. But they didn't get the job done. And then to be able to come out and have press conferences saying, we got Pat Neufeld, who's a 2-time CFL All-Star the last 2 years, coming back. We've got Willie Jefferson, who is one of the best defensive players in the league. And we got Adam Bighill, who's another one of the best defensive players in the league. They're all back. They're all committed. They want to go after another Grey Cup. That speaks to just how committed the entire organization is to trying to run it back and make people forget about that 1-point loss to the Argos in this year's Grey Cup.
It's so weird. I've lived just in the CFL world where the Bombers are, the greatest team in the world and all their fans and stuff, right? But now, that the shoe's on Toronto's foot, it is funny that people, like I saw it looked to me like a pact on Twitter that I saw people celebrating and, Enoch Mwamba's at the hockey games. And I've seen a lot of the pop in circumstances and you still see people like poo-pooing on that. Oh, there's not that many people there. Like, I don't get, like, even when it seems like they really showed up. I mean, do you have an alternative perspective? I mean, you've seen what I've seen online.
Well, the thing that I think is that it's like you feel good for fan bases when their team wins, especially if they're a fan base like Saskatchewan or Winnipeg or Hamilton or Ottawa, where they're really committed. The BC Lions getting a lot better too. They're really a committed fan base. They care, they support, they come out, they yell, they scream, they drink the beer, they support the team in many ways, they buy merch. And it's nice. You feel good for that group when a team wins. Now, the thing with Toronto is, where have these fans been? They don't support the team. A lot of people in that city do poo-poo the Grey Cup. They do poo-poo the CFL in general. And it makes it kind of like, I don't know, like, is anyone happy for Toronto that they won? I mean, does their ownership even care about them? I mean, we don't really know those things. So it's amazing that they do it because they're just a ragtag bunch. They were fighting on the sidelines. They were not a cohesive group. They were like the anti-Bombers. The Bombers were the most cohesive group you could find with all these great pros and all these veterans. Hey, Toronto comes in with a team that's been fighting and having problems all year, and they win. So, I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's a good story. And if that's what it takes to get people in Toronto to take notice, well, I'm hopeful that they did, because it did look like there was quite a few people there for that celebration. And, I hear they always get good ratings on television in the Toronto area. People just don't seem to want to bother going to the games. So maybe that's all you can hope is that it helps bring a few more people out next year and that there's a real future for football in Toronto, because it's important to the CFL that they be good and a good, strong franchise.
Yeah, I mean, because I just I retweeted that one of the, I think they had the Argos had posted. I'm like, it looks like a ton of people, and oh, there's only 500 there. I'm like, I don't know. To me, it's online. It looks like it's a Rockets time. I agree that maybe they don't all come to.
It wasn't stadium. The Raptors winning, I'll tell you that much. But
the other last comment on that, and it's been we've had American Thanksgiving and stuff in between, but Bob Irving, Winnipeg legend, came out really hard, right? Oh, Toronto hasn't even updated their website. Any thoughts on that, or just I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Pretty major oversight, wouldn't you say? I mean, they didn't actually have a story saying that they won the Grey Cup on their website, and we're talking about 24 hours after the game. It's, to me, I think their explanation is that maybe something just got hung up online and didn't publish and people weren't seeing it, because those stories were published on the Canadian Football League site. Like, they did exist. So it just wasn't showing up on their site. Somebody should have noticed though. And it's just a little bit telling, it's a little bit telling, because there are concerns. And I think Bob Irving would be one of the people that would have this concern that MLSE doesn't really care about the Argos much. If you go to Toronto and you go near the arena, I think it's the Scotiabank Arena right now. I can't remember what they're calling it these days, but their offices are there for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and they have logos for the Maple Leafs, the Raptors, and Toronto FC soccer team. They don't even mention the Argos. The Argos basically don't exist in their world, and unless they're going to show the respect for it, I think that people, wonder why anybody else is going to have respect for it. So, and we also know that Larry Tenenbaum was not thrilled with how the direction the CFL wanted to go in. He wants a younger audience. He's a proponent of XFL, partnerships. He's a proponent of maybe looking at 4 downs. Realistically, there's a big divide between what he, as the chairman of MLSE, wants to what, say, Wade Miller wants in Winnipeg, where he's a publicly owned team and being very successful with what they have right now. So that whole thing is just a really interesting dynamic, and you can only hope that when they get together in the board of directors chairs that they're all going to be on the same page going forward.
Just to round out the Argos talk here, because I do want to talk, obviously, Blue Bombers, having you on. McLeod Bethel-Thompson getting thumb surgery this week. I saw he zoomed into the championship game because he would be home celebrating, Thanksgiving and all that. I saw, is he retiring? Chad Kelly looked really good at the end of the game. I saw people online say, oh, Chad's going to the NFL. I don't think that happens after one quarter of good play in the Grey Cup. But what do you make of the Argos quarterback situation from your view?
Well, all you got to do is ask Chad. He's better than 50% of all the quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So, surely he can play, almost start if he's better than 50%, right? So I'm not sure I buy that, but he did have a good fourth quarter against the Bombers. And I think that he would be a very interesting player to take over as the quarterback there if McLeod Bethel-Thompson does indeed retire. I've heard those rumblings that he might. I have no inside information on that, Reed. I don't know what his plan is. I do know that he doesn't really need football. I don't think that's, he doesn't need the money to play football. He could certainly move on to other things. Incredibly smart guy from a successful partnership in his life and all that kind of stuff. So I think it will be interesting to see, because that's the first time you've ever really seen McLeod Bethel-Thompson be on top of the mountain, be considered the best. He was he even got hurt in that game, but he was the winning quarterback, right? So he's never been an all-star before. He was the East Division all-star this year, but he's never really been thought in that category. But he came out this year and he threw for a ton of yards, looked really good in the postseason. Had a decent enough game in the Grey Cup to help the Argos win, and he could have a real nice opportunity to do that again. But maybe that's not exactly what he wants. And I've heard talk that if he does retire, the Argos are in on talks for whoever might be available at quarterback. And we know that Levi Mitchell hasn't signed yet with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, so would it be impossible that he'd even be in that conversation? Well, we've got to see if it gets to free agency, but if he does, and MBT's not coming back, I wouldn't be shocked if the Argos were looking that way.
It's so weird. It's foreign to me, at least, how they traded for his rights, and they gave up picks, right? Hamilton gave up picks for that, but then it still might not be. I see Ballsy screaming online, he's coming to Saskatchewan. I don't really know what to make of that. That was kind of the other big question this week. Do you really think Toronto? If I was Toronto, I would just ride Chad Kelly. That's just me. But I have Taylor Heineke as my quarterback. I like the scrappy kind of underdog guy there. But what do you think that the Argos really need, Bo Levi?
No, not necessarily, because we could see what Chad Kelly has to offer. But do we know? Do we honestly know what he has to offer? He took amongst the fewest snaps of any quarterback in the league this year. He was a short yardage guy. He's definitely big. He definitely had a nice run there in the Grey Cup that really was a big part of them winning. But would if I ran any of the teams in the CFL, would I say I'm just going to anoint this guy as my starting quarterback and go with it? I'm not sure I would be able to have that faith. I would have to say, though, I didn't believe it when Rick Campbell anointed Nathan Rourke last offseason and said he's going to be our starting quarterback. I was like, well, what are you talking about? You're just going to just give him the job? Well, obviously I didn't know that he was as good as he is, and Rick Campbell did. So all the power to him. But I don't know that Chad Kelly, to me, really fits in that category. He reminds me more of a Chris Streveler type. Maybe a better thrower, but we haven't seen a ton from him either. But that scrappy guy, those guys are popular in the CFL, and they can certainly be successful. You got to be able to throw the football too, though.
His photo with the Grey Cup that he posted, I said, I don't know if you see it, it's like him with his beard. I said, put this in the Louvre. It really is he's got, like I said, I think Swag Kelly is, I think, whatever they're saying online. The kids are tweeting me at Swag Kelly. I like that. I like that. I'm better than 50% feels like when, Cam Newton was saying that 2 years ago, there's not 32 other people better than me. It's like, well, no, there's 64 people now better than you because you're not on any roster. The Mike O'Shea re-signing, was that ever in doubt? I know we batted around, I think Daryl and Darren and I on the live show pre-Grey Cup, Daryl Davis and Darryl Ballamy, but was there ever any fear that he wasn't going to come back?
I've never had any doubt about it whatsoever, to be honest. And I mean, one of the number one reasons is if you look around the CFL, there's not a lot of opportunities there. There's nothing really in terms of advancement. The only way that he could really advance to leave Winnipeg to get something better would be if he was going to be a coach GM combination. And there's not really anywhere where that job is available. And so, you know, unless he wanted to leave now and just go do the exact same job in Ottawa and try to turn that around, or Montreal for that matter, maybe. But he's got something going great here. You know, he's built something. And from year to year, it works for him. And he lets the players run the room because he's brought Mike O'Shea's players into that room. So they can do what they want because they continually push his message, and it gets through to people. And the new guys spend 1 year here, and then they're leaders themselves, you know. And it's a real cycle. And I think the Bombers probably look at the situation right now and say they're probably going to host the Grey Cup in 2025. That's the third year of Mike O'Shea's next contract. We'll, you know, just again, reiterating that has not been officially announced yet, and we're still waiting on word on that. Probably not going to come right away this week, but we'll see. But they can look forward right now, I think, and say, we have an excellent chance to be one of the top teams for the next 3 years with O'Shea. Big Hill signed for 2. Collaros is signed for 3. Willie Jefferson doesn't want to go anywhere else. He lives here. You know, this is home now. His family's here. So that core is there. And there's a chance to keep riding it. And, you know, I guess if I'm just speaking from a personal standpoint, if I'm Mike O'Shea, I don't really see why you'd want to leave.
Well, that's the thing. I think some people take the personalness out of it, right? And that was, I think, even when they were in Calgary, they were trying to figure out, like, okay, is Jake Mayer, like, what's he doing? And he was on our show back, like, pre-whatever season. He's like, I really like living here. Like, I really like the town. I really like the people, my girlfriend. I think now they're engaged. Like, you know, like, Mike O'Shea is really comfortable there. Like, he probably walks around. He's a living legend. People like him. Like, I'm pretty comfortable here. I think that goes a long way sometimes into just like, hey, why go and start at the bottom again somewhere when I have a pretty good thing going?
Well, he's a Winnipegger now, and as you know from your interactions with me and Jeff Hamilton and Darren Bombing and all those guys, we're pretty awesome, right? So, I mean, you know, there is a lot of there's a lot of that to it, you know. I mean, I do believe, although we're a crazy cold place, Reed, it's stupid to be here in the winter, to be honest. I don't even want to go to Mexico right now, but we're kind of hardy people, and we're pretty friendly people, and there's a certain kind of guy that fits in Winnipeg. And I think Mike O'Shea, with his sort of put on your work boots and your construction hat kind of attitude, fits in to this community and is really, really embraced it and really been a part, a big part of shaping what Blue Bomber football is all about, but also embracing what it was from the past and kind of bringing that back too. So, I do really believe that the future is bright for this organization for at least a few more years. Eventually, a lot of these guys are going to retire. Most of the core is in their 30s, but for the next few years, it should be a real good chance to be successful. And Mike O'Shea is the catalyst for all of that, and looks like he's going to continue to be.
We're talking about Manitoba and freezing butts off. We were having a conversation. I'd be curious to get your thoughts. Did you see JC's article on 3 Down about like changing the what is it, the window that you're able to hop between the CFL and, trying to like save talent? And we were joking that, well, one of the reasons why people might want to stay in the XFL is just not to freeze your ass off in Manitoba for half the year. But what do you think about that? Thoughts of, as we're getting ready here, XFL February, USFL, like CFL trying to figure out, like, we got to preserve some of the talent here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time it's been discussed, but I do believe that the schedules would line up where people could play both, right? And then, and if that is possible, you have to wonder how many people would want to do that. I think if you're the CFL, the concern would be having real good talent go and play elsewhere and maybe get hurt, or you might lose some of your branding power and your star power. Like it's pretty important, I think, to the Canadian Football League that Zach Collaros wants to be in the Canadian Football League, and that Nathan Rourke, there's a guy, like, if there's competing leagues looking for him, he's a guy that would have a lot of offers, isn't he? And it's important that Willie Jefferson wants to stay here. And it's important that Jake Mayer and players you've mentioned, they want to be a part of it. And if they do start doing something like that, where maybe they're splitting their time between leagues, it kind of loses their identity as CFL players. So I personally would not like to see that. And I just think it's too important to the league's overall brand to make sure that we know that these are CFL players. But if that causes you to lose some of your talent pool, that's not good either. So far, none of the leagues have really taken off yet, and they haven't really lost a lot in terms of their talent pool. They've certainly lost players off the negotiation list. There's no doubt about that. But they seem to have been able to find pretty good players as well. And I don't think it's been a huge deal so far. But yeah, I think it's going to be important to the preservation of the CFL to keep players part of the CFL brand, unless they're free agents. And then, of course, they can do whatever they want. And not that many people are signing long-term deals up here either, right? 1 or 2 years for an American. If you're brand new, you're getting a 2-year deal. Surely you can wait to go to a rival league if that's what you want to do.
Well, I think, like you said, I think it muddies the waters, and obviously you're going to have CFL detractors, but I think, NFL, CFL, and that, then you have those other leagues there, and whatever, if you want to call it the B tier, the C tier, whatever, and I think, allowing players to jump immediately down, that feels very much like USFL this year. Okay, we got to get as many guys as we can onto the, NFL practice rosters, and I don't like that. I think Naylor responded to that too, and was like, I hate this because it makes us one more step closer to a developmental league, which, unlike what the XFL really seems to want to be, we are just a developmental league. The CFL does not want that at all. No,
it never has wanted that. It never has wanted that. And if it did want that, it probably could have changed to 4 downs years ago and become NFL-like. But they've resisted that because there's history and there's a brand to the Canadian game. It's the reason it's the reason that people don't love it in Toronto, but it's also the reason why the league is still on its feet after 100 and whatever years. It hasn't always been the CFL, but I really believe that's the biggest thing that does keep it going is the branding. It's the unusual rules. It's the fact that players come up here and want to stay. If all of a sudden guys are able to jump around all the time, would Willie Jefferson, when he came up here in 2014 and all he wanted was really to go back to the NFL, he told us that. If there was another option available to him, would he maybe have gone for that and never been, never had a kid who was born in Canada, never become a citizen? No, he's not a citizen, but never a resident of Canada. I would really worry about the legacy that a move like that would leave. So I'm definitely putting my vote in the no category for those kind of transfer possibilities.
If you would have told me 2 weeks ago that our CFL show would have been high in a week that had the XFL quarterback selection, the XFL draft, then they have the day 2 of the draft, but I was traveling, and then the Grey Cup. And if you had told me that our Grey Cup show would have been by leaps and bounds the most viewed content that we did all week, I was thinking it would be far opposite. I thought, okay, we're going to do the XFL show. We got to go, we're up in Grey Cup. We got to go do it. We got everything booked in, blown away the other way. So like you said, I think it speaks to it having its own brand and identity and everything else on that I wouldn't want to muddy that, because it's very surprising to me even as still an outsider, the weight that carried over the week of the Grey Cup.
Are those clicks all coming from Canada, or a lot of them, is it from the U.S.?
We get a mix. I mean, obviously still primarily American. I would have to look. I could probably look right now on here if we want to see the percentage.
Well, you don't have to, but I mean, I would just be curious about that, because it's how much is it growing in terms of the attention that it gets in the U.S. That's one area where I do think the XFL and the USFL have an effect on Canada, because the CFL is still trying to make those inroads into the U.S. in terms of their coverage on ESPN and getting a little bit of viewership here and there. They certainly draw some numbers on occasion for some of the games. But if there's, these so many leagues that aren't the NFL, it kind of might, muddy the waters in terms of, I guess, what consumers want, right? I mean, I personally think if there's NFL going until the spring leagues start and then the CFL starts and goes into the NFL, I think year-round football, personally, I don't like it. I think it's too much. I think you do need a break from it. I think you need a break from it to get excited about it the next time. And so that's my personal opinion on it. It's like if another baseball season started right after MLB, after the World Series, you know, I would have a tough time with that as a consumer. That's all I'm saying.
I don't disagree with that. And I also think you need to stop talking to Dorothy, because you're going to poison her into saying that too much football in the spring. But no, I agree. I mean, I look forward to the NFL. Like, this is work to me, right? CFL and USFL. Like, I got to watch the games. I got to do whatever. Like, NFL, I can watch this as a fan, and I can scream at the Commanders beating the Eagles or whatever. Like, that's where I enjoy that. To answer your question, we hit about, well, I think it was like 14,500 views on our Grey Cup show. First off, that was very impressive. 86% came from Canada. So we had about 10% from the U.S. And would you be surprised that 50% of the audience was 55 years or older? 50%.
I didn't know people our age knew about podcasts. I don't.
Yeah.
So yes, I would be a little bit surprised, but there you go. But yeah. I mean, yeah, so the big news here is that you're a hit in Canada, Reed. So good for you, buddy.
Anything else before I let you go? You're coming here to Seattle in a couple weeks. We'll hang out. Any other news? I mean, I think we did good hitting all the kind of the weekly stuff here. I wanted to get your thoughts on Winnipeg kind of post Grey Cup. So,
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing that I mentioned on another show that I did earlier was that when we went into the stadium this week to talk to guys like Willie Jefferson, so on this past Monday, went in there to talk to Willie Jefferson, and the weight room is right next door to the media room. And that weight room, there was people in there, man. It was noisy. You could hear people talking. You could hear the weights going. And I asked Willie about it. You know, I said, like, didn't the season just end? And he said, no, there's 10, 15 guys in there. They're already there. They're already working out. They're already thinking about next season. They're already, like, not all of those guys are signed for next year, but they're here. They're working. They're thinking that they're probably going to be part of this team still going forward. And, you know, it amazes me that the work starts that quickly. And I think that's just another thing that tells you the Blue Bombers are an organization that takes winning very seriously. And, you know, that's why I expect them to be right there at the top again next year. If not playing for the Grey Cup again, at least contending.
Was the other show you did any good? Big show?
Well, it was Jamie Nye's show, the Green Zone out of Regina, and they were asking me some similar questions, but it was just a radio show, so they didn't get to see my pretty face
and your fire and everything else. So that's good. I need to get Jamie on here. I think I've hit him up multiple times, or like I've tried to get the follow back, and I haven't always got that. So we need to get Jamie on here. That would be a good that'd be a good like feather cap, cap in the whatever feather in the cap to get Jamie on the podcast. So
the man knows his football, so you definitely should.
Well, Ted, thank you so much coming on. I appreciate it. It was good seeing you and everyone else up in Regina. And I think we're locked in for Hamilton. It seems like that way. So we'll see. Dorothy's excited. So anyway, thank you so much. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot, man.
Special thanks to Emory and Ted for coming on. Really appreciate that. Busy week for me just with real life work. So I really appreciate Emory and Ted for kind of scheduling around. I had to go film a bunch of apartment inspections. We were checking like sewer lines and stuff. Very interesting work. Kind of weird. But anyway, should be back to normal next week. Like I said, have a big guest, I think, scheduled for a Tuesday interview. So we'll know if that is coming. I'll be able to promote that. Incredibly exciting. And then, we're kind of here. We're kind of in the getting ready for the XFL, USFL, CFL offseason. We'll try to kind of do some post-mortem, post-mortem interviews of the CFL season, continuing to reach out for that. Maybe we'll get Jamie Nye on. Maybe I need to get Jamie Nye on, see if Ted can help me out with that, Ted Wyman. I really appreciate that. We did the jersey giveaway last week, if you guys missed that, on the live stream with Rick, so we announced the winners for that. Robert is getting the Case Cookis jersey, and the Texas Pete is getting the Doug Flutie one. I think I have that right. We'll be mailing those out. They haven't been mailed yet. I know Robert was curious if he missed that in the mail, so we will do that. You have any voicemails? I think Dorothy was asking about that. How do you leave voicemails? The text is on the screen every week at themarkcast.com/voicemail. You ever want to leave a question or comment for a guest? Sometimes I try to promote those ahead of time. you ever have a question for me, or I can, you have a general question, we can pose that to any of the guests. Like and subscribe. Let me go grab, and we'll jump cut. Like and subscribe. Don't forget, now this ball suddenly has gotten way more interesting. We were going to have the Brian Scott signed Spring League Veterans Day ball here. Brian Scott, MVP of the Spring League, played in the USFL. Looking to be like Brian Scott is going to be playing for the Vegas Vipers here in the XFL. Saw a lot of people posting XFL extra points. I believe Scott there on Twitter posting. Brian posting the photo with the XFL ball, and I think he tagged like Las Vegas in the post. Wouldn't that be wild if Brian tagged the stadium that the XFL was playing in? We sure would like to know that. But this ball suddenly has gotten way more interesting if you have a future XFL quarterback of the Vegas Vipers, Brian Scott. So like and subscribe. This ball can be yours. We jumped up tons of subscribers following the Grey Cup stuff, following the XFL draft, if you missed any of that. But like and subscribe. This is going to a lucky winner. And then I have some other Spring League jerseys we'll be giving away as well for that big. We're less than two. I think we're short, like 180, whatever. We're almost at 2,500. So like and subscribe. Thank you guys all so much. Hope this episode does all right time-wise. Like I said, pre-recording part of this week. So we'll see how we do. Thanks as always for your support. Take care.